Hey, I'm Andrew Chang. Welcome to About That, the show where we're all about explaining and expanding on the news. I've kind of fallen down this rabbit hole on TikTok, and it's not the kind of stuff you'd expect. So, I mean, if you're on TikTok, then you know that there's been this kind of explosion of mental health-related content on the platform, and it's stuff like this.
4 questions to ask yourself when choosing the right therapist. 1, have they worked with young people like you? 2, do they have experience with the issues you're dealing with? 3, do they understand your identity and culture? 4, do you feel comfortable and safe around them?
So the research shows that Gen Zers in Canada and the US, so we're talking about people in their teens to their late 20s, they experience mental health issues at a much higher rate than Gen Xers or Boomers. And we also know that TikTok as a platform, I mean, it's made up primarily of young people. So, people 16 to 34, I think is the age bracket. So it kind of makes sense that you'd have a lot of people on TikTok who are talking about mental health and using it as this sort of forum to tell their personal stories and to use supportive hashtags. And this is at a time when getting professional help can be really hard, right? Either because of stigma or cost. And so, TikTok has become this sort of de facto therapy safe space for a lot of people. And I got to say, the content is pretty compelling once you start watching it. But I can already tell that this is something that I'm going to need a little bit of help to really understand.
I heard you were feeling low, so I wrote this for you. If you feel down and you lost your crown, well then I'm here for you. And if you know someone that's struggling, this one is for you. Every time you're feeling low, just remember there is hope. Happiness looks good on you.
So I can't think of anyone better to do this than Evie Kwong, social media manager at Vice News. Thanks for doing this.
Of course. I'm so happy to talk about TikTok. Always. Always.
Well, which leads me to my first question, which is how much time do you spend? Like, we just got to establish a baseline of
okay.
Street
okay,
cred,
fine.
Right?
Okay, so street cred, sometimes I could be on there for 3 hours. Sometimes it's work. A day. I mean, 3 hours a day.
Sometimes it's work. Yeah.
Sometimes it's work. I'm going to say 60%, but the rest, personal.
But safe to say, like, you know this space pretty well. And
Yeah.
specifically, again, like the part of this platform where mental health has become the thing to
Yes.
talk about, right?
Yeah, because I think what you get from TikTok, if you get onto the app and you're scrolling up and down, is these really personal stories.
All right, so I decided to see a psychiatrist for the first time today because I've been feeling extra mentally ill. Like, this is me digging my nails into my hands so hard, trying not to cry, but I ended up crying anyway. And at the end of the session, she diagnosed me with not 1, not 2, but 3 mental disorders.
I don't let myself refresh until it's absolutely necessary, until I'm in dire need of energy and assistance. Why don't we value ourselves? Why don't we recharge? Does this happen to anyone else? Let me know.
You do get the dances, you do get the fun stuff, the recipes, but there's a lot of just straight to camera. Anybody in the world can really download this if you have a smartphone and really talk about your stories. And I think that's become a really big part of TikTok. People bearing their souls and people talking about mental health, really. And it's really led by this younger generation because, I mean, a lot of it's in the pandemic. You didn't have a lot of people when you're at home, when you're stuck home from school. And so that's a really new world of communication, a new form. And when you get vulnerable and you have no friends around to talk to you at recess, like, that's where you go.
Nobody ever turned around and said, I caused this child to be sad. Our school system caused this child to be anxious. We did this to our kids. Instead, they looked at us and they said, something's wrong with it. Put it on medication. Be sure to tell it that it's defective.
And it's people like sort of bearing their souls, but there are just as many, if not many more people who are watching other people bear their souls too, right? Like that's a big part of it.
It's huge. And, some videos can get, 5 million views. And that's where these influencers get their kind of build in terms of mental health influencers. In a darker side, some pseudo therapists that aren't actually therapists. So there's good and there's bad for sure.
Okay, so let me ask you about this because like I can't help but, and forgive me for this.
It's okay.
I can't help but come at this like as a little bit of a skeptic, right? Because like how much of what we're seeing on this platform is like sort of genuine vulnerability and a search for kinship, and how much of it is performative and sort of like grief as a sideshow.
Yes.
Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, because I think when there are instances where people get really big off these videos where they're talking about their vulnerabilities, whether it may be, oh, I just got diagnosed with this or whatever. And I think it's really cool to break down the barriers to kind of show people that, hey, I'm vulnerable. You know, I want to share what I have, but it also is a performance at some point.
One thing I know, it's only part of luck and soul. I'm putting on my best show.
I'm here. I'm requesting time off. I need a mental health week. I can't approve this. We're already short-staffed. I can't have you have a week off for your mental health.
You know, when you're looking for the views, when you're looking for the likes, and if you want to keep engaging with people and keep getting that, become an influencer eventually, you're going to have to, you know, peddle the same stuff that people are used to seeing. They want to see that. But I think there is a big benefit in people being able to share things that, you know, you don't get to hear or people don't get platformed all the time.
Something to rely on. So tell me when
I do want to be as open-minded about this as possible, right?
Yeah.
So share with me what you see as kind of the big upsides to the fact that people are being as open as they are.
Yeah, and I think, again, it's really led by this generation where there are less stigmas around mental health and talking about it. If any, there are none to some of the Gen Z influencers that are out there. They really think, you know, we're the generation leading this talk, so we have to share our stories. We have to be really truthful with them. And I think where really there are benefits is like hashtags like Black mental health.
Wow, man. Damn.
The ugly side of being mentally ill that they don't show you? I haven't been able to shower, bathe, or wash my face and brush my teeth in days.
Or Native American mental health, which is a really big hashtag where tens of thousands of creators follow it and also make stuff.
The Hope for Wellness line is open 24/7. All you got to do is call in and you'll be patched immediately over to a First Nations counselor.
But there's this fear that lives inside of me, somewhere that I can't reach. And this fear isn't from me. This fear is from my ancestors. My grandparents and my great-grandparents all went to Indian residential schools, and this is part of my generational trauma.
And the talking it out part of it is the hardest part, right? Like if I think of any other part of my life, like there's probably not a venue where it's as easy as this to just talk about things, and that has its own, I mean, just the stigma alone, right? Of talking about mental health, that kind of goes down.
Yeah, and also when you see other people do it, you kind of want to do it too. Not everyone, but some people just see these people as like friends that are on the internet. You might not know them, but it's like, wow, they really go through what I do. And it is so particular to different people's experiences. You know, I'm Chinese Canadian, and you'll find a Chinese Canadian creator who's talking about those specific things that I go through, you know, growing up with my parents and our own culture and those kind of stigmas. It's really effective in that way. And I find that it's making me and other people who are even older consider, you know, why is it so hard to talk about what's bothering me? Why can't I just say, hey, there's something wrong with me? Everyone has a mental health issue at some time and has to deal with it. And so they're using these stories to really get guidance, which again, can be misinformation if you go too far with it. But also I think it really is building a community of people openly talking about mental health.
So tired to share my nights. I wanna cry and I wanna love, but all my tears have been used up.
So I'm glad you bring up misinformation, because this is the point of the interview where I make you argue against yourself.
Okay, perfect.
So the upsides I get, and believe me, I get it. Mm-hmm. The downsides, there are many.
There are downsides, because as is with any social media app, there's lots of misinformation. Like we saw what happened with Facebook, obviously. It's been really taken over by that. But the situation here on TikTok, it's different, because the medium is different, where someone's speaking to you. It's even more personal than looking at a text, watching a video from somewhere else.
Which makes it potentially more dangerous, right?
Exactly.
Because I'm much more likely to trust and see the humanity in that person and say, well, that must be it. Whether it's some kind of diagnosis or encouraging me to misdiagnose myself or just spewing things that are outright false.
Yeah, there is a video, and it's about a woman sharing her journey, finding out she's diagnosed with bipolar disorder, which is great. Like, thank you for sharing those things with us. But again, I think in a way that it's okay to make it normal. It's okay to talk about it. But in the comments, which is a really big part of TikTok, lots of people are like, I have this too. I'm pretty sure I have this too. I think that's what I have. And like, then maybe they'll get on a way, like they'll start posting videos themselves about, hey, I have this disorder, but is that true? Do we know that? And I think overall as a people, because we haven't talked about it very much, mental health, people are seeking answers for why they feel away. But it's so easy to get trapped when you have that one-on-one kind of connection.
Because like how many times have we heard people talk about like Dr. Google, right?
Yes.
And how like it is a terrible rabbit hole to go down if you start trying to Google your own symptoms and be your own doctor. And here I am listening to you talk, and I'm thinking about Dr. TikTok.
Yeah.
Right? Like what's the difference there? And
the difference I think is basically the fact that people as a whole are more seeing this as like a personal story. And some creators are really confident in what they're saying, but they also preface by saying, hey, I'm not a doctor, I just want to share this. So
that's fair. Okay.
That's kind of the way that they're trying to combat it. Because there are people, like there's a lot of naturopaths that also talk about mental health and like take these supplements, do this or whatever. And there are people that are convinced because they want to build a following. But again, with any other app, any other influencer, anyone who seems big, you got to be sure that like, hey, what is their background? Why do they know this? Just because they're diagnosed with something doesn't mean that I have it too. So that's something we've definitely seen. And it's definitely followed a trend of people being like, I don't know what I have and I just want to see. And then they see 3 videos, because the algorithm's so good at targeting everything that you
just
have.
knows, right?
And they're like, I definitely have this. It's definitely me. I definitely have this. And I find that to be extremely harmful, especially if it's just so easy to get those answers.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, listening to you, I feel like there's something of a buyer beware mentality that you have to go into as a viewer, right?
Yes.
When you're watching some of these things. But you tell me, like, what is the broader lesson here? Because I see the virtue in it.
Yeah.
Right. And yes, the more we talk about this sort of thing, and the more we're open about the issues that we're dealing with, why we feel the way we feel, the better, right?
Yeah.
More talk is good.
Yes.
What's the broader lesson for you?
I think the broader lesson is with any social media, please be warned and be careful, especially with new mediums that, there's misinformation. These people are not all experts, but at the same time, here's an anecdote. There is a TikTok that I showed my mom. I'm, again, a Chinese-Canadian family where we're kind of cold. We don't really say I love you. It's nothing like that. And so there was a TikTok kind of breaking that down in a funny way where it's like, you got to be a doctor. You got to, get all the professions. And it's, how do you respond to your parent? And what did they say back to you?
When I was your age, I had nothing. And you're saying to me you're depressed? You're not sad. It's just because you're on your phone too much.
Or when you say, hey, I'm going through like a depressive episode, often our culture, it's more like, no, those are curses. Just go read a book and you'll be fine. I don't think it's that bad. I went through something worse. And so having that video to show my mom, which I do all the time, it's helped me explain so many things without like a yelling match or just having that kind of, and I think those are really cool things where you touch on cultural things. Now, when I'm in the zone, I'm not trying to diagnose myself or anything. And I think that's the main thing. So if you see a creator's video, you're like, oh, kind of sounds like me. Maybe if you have the opportunity, go find someone you can talk to or a therapist or someone. Do not just believe that's what it is, like right when you see it. But the bigger lesson here is like, just be sure that it's okay. And I think it's good to have people sharing more about mental health because at that point, you can talk more about your own.
Evie Kwong, brilliant. Thank you so much.
I hope I converted you.
Okay, hey there. Welcome back to About That. I'm here with Rachel Brown. So Rachel, you're one of the producers on our show. You produced this segment in particular. And do you remember like weeks ago when we had this conversation about, we have an assignment for you, Rachel, and it involves a deep dive into TikTok.
I do remember that, and I wasn't expecting to really do that during my time here, so it was definitely a bit of a curveball.
Yeah, because like neither you nor I are native TikTokers, but this was the assignment. And so what did you find when you did that deep dive into, kind of where mental health intersects with TikTok itself?
It was really interesting, and I'll say that there's billions of videos in this space, more than 20 billion videos in the hashtag mental health alone. And it's really interesting to see the range of discussion and debate happening.
When all you want is to give up. Yeah, that shit's rough. You don't know pain until you're staring at yourself in the mirror with tears in your eyes.
These are the 3 mental health disorders you all get the most confused about. So what the hell do I have? Is it ADHD, borderline personality disorder, or bipolar? Let's clear the air once and for all.
So for example, there's, one video I saw the other day with a licensed professional talking about the really clear differences between borderline personality disorder and ADHD and those sorts of things, and other regular everyday people, bringing viewers into their struggles with various medical and mental health conditions. So there's the educational sort of serious side, and then there's the more kind of humorous side where people are talking about mentee bees, which is an example of kind of a new lexicon around mental health that's kind of been birthed on TikTok.
I just heard someone call a mental breakdown a mentee bee, and I am here for it.
But why do I always feel like I'm in the twilight zone? And I always feel like somebody's watching me.
Every time I hear that term, it makes like, doesn't it sound like it's something like Ned Flanders would say? Totally. Mentee bee, like a mental breakdown of Rooney,
Exactly. And I thought the same thing too. And a few people I've talked to have, talked about it being a bit cringy. But I think it's also been this jumping off point for people as well to talk about these issues.
No, sure. And I get the whole idea of the space being hospitable and warm and just honest and genuine and authentic. What about like is there an actual pathway to care through all of the humor and the sharing and the good feelings?
Definitely. And that's one thing that really struck me, is that a lot of people are accessing their therapists and other licensed therapists on TikTok. They've become really popular TikTok users in and of themselves. And I talked to one licensed therapist in Illinois named Lindsay Fleming, who has been was reluctant at first to use TikTok in her practice. But she told me a little bit about how she got started on the app. I'll show you what she said to me.
Oh my gosh, yes. I started because I did a leadership workshop for middle school girls, and I told them we had a social media challenge. If they all met their goal of decreasing social media time, I would buy them all Starbucks. And one of the girls is like, Lindsay, we don't want Starbucks. I'm like, okay, just open my practice, balling on a budget here. Like, what do we want? And they're like, we want you to download TikTok. I said, absolutely not. That's your space. And then so that's why I posted my first one. It's like 5 tips about self-esteem.
First TikTok topic, featuring Danny singing in the background. But for real, one way to help improve self-esteem is stopping comparing yourself to others. What that means is when you see someone walking down the hall, don't be looking and saying, oh, is that how skinny I am? Am I skinnier than her? Don't be paying attention to other people's grades. Am I smarter than her? Don't be focused on, do I have more boys liking my pictures than her? This is not helpful for your self-esteem.
So when all of a sudden I had like 5 million views on a TikTok, I felt so overwhelmed, and I just went into hiding for a day, and I was like, oh my gosh, that many people have seen my face and me doing my therapist thing. So it was very surprising to me. I was not expecting it.
So that's pretty interesting, right? And I get why she would be wary about the experience of going on, because the bits and the dribs and drabs of information that can get out on TikTok about mental health. I wonder if there's a universe where a small amount of information is actually more dangerous than no information. Does that make sense?
Totally. It's a real risk given the sheer volume of videos that are out there. And it's hard to sometimes tell the difference between what's evidence-based or from a licensed professional and just from a regular everyday person who may not be informed. So there's a risk of self-diagnosis. There's a risk of, people sort of falling into these rabbit holes of misinformation. And I asked Lindsay about this, and she said that she encourages her clients and her followers to question even what she puts out there and to really inform themselves to ensure that what they're seeing is applicable to them and is helpful and not causing more harm. And she also had some pointers for parents and for people who are using TikTok as a way to learn more about mental health.
I would just say, especially for parents, if your teen comes to you and says, I swear I have ADHD, I've seen all these TikToks, it's very easy for us, and even me as a professional, to be like, don't listen to that. That's not true. But that's so invalidating. And then what happens is the teen will continue to watch those videos and they're just not going to share it with you. So I really recommend sitting down and being like, okay, show me these videos. Let's get curious together and try to provide that space for them to really have an open discussion with you regarding social media.
Okay, so Rachel, 2 questions for you to finish. What's your bottom line, and are you going to still use TikTok?
First, I think my bottom line here is that given that there is a risk of misinformation and other kind of negative aspects that can come with TikTok in general, and in specifically using it to look at mental health related videos, I think that there's so many positives that that take over the negatives. I think that it's a great jumping off point for people who are struggling or people who want to learn more to hear a whole range of perspectives from people all around the world. I think it's an amazing time to be able to scroll through that and learn through an endless list of videos. And number 2, will I still be using it? I think it may be slightly addicting, and I think I've fallen prey to it a little bit. So I think I'm definitely going to keep it on my app. So hopefully it doesn't go too far. But yes, I think it's great.
All right, Rachel, thanks so much.
Thanks, Andrew.